Hello and welcome to Productivity Nerd, a podcast all about getting shit done, hopefully in an elegant way that doesn't leave you too broken. In our crazy worlds, we're all about balancing the need to work enough to make ends meet, enough not to annoy our bosses, but also enough that we feel like we've done enough, which can be a whole different psychological and emotional ballgame, along with the human need to rest and stay well. Plus, on top of that, we'd quite like to enjoy ourselves, maybe just a little bit along the way, spending quality time with those we love. I, for one, love hearing about how people get that balance and work more efficiently so they have more time to do the things that they love.
Hi and welcome to Productivity Nerd. It is great to have you here. On today's episode, I have the absolute joy of being joined by international speaker and author Paul McGee. His book SUMO has been a staple on my bookshelves for many years. I can't count, got to be over 15, I think. So you can't imagine how thrilled I was when he said yes to come and talk to me about SUMO. I also think it is a rare opportunity to hear a very fabulous phrase, not his, quoted by somebody else, but honestly, it's genius. Deep thinking is to humans what swimming is to cats. So if you want to know what that's about, listen on. Hello and welcome to Productivity Nerd. I'm Kathy Soulsby, and today I am super excited to speak to Paul McGee. So Paul has a massive back catalogue of books, about 13, ranging from self-confidence, getting people to listen to you, and lots of other mind management ideas. I will leave you a link to his website at the end of the episode. And he's also spoken in person to about 1 million people worldwide. Might even be more. That stat came from February. Might even be more than that now. But today we're going to talk about a classic, SUMO, shut up and move on. Now, if you've listened before, you know that I am obsessed with what helps us get things done without kind of losing our minds in the process. And productivity isn't just about tasks and planners. It's about managing your state so you can be the best version of you. Because let's face it, when you're frazzled or you're defensive or you're drowning in self-doubt, your to-do list might as well be in hieroglyphics. And Paul's work is all about that. How to manage your thoughts, your reactions, and your mindset so you can move forward. So SUMO is kind of part psychology, part humour, part a bit of tough love, I would say. And it's helped so many people reframe how they think. I first read the book years ago. It is now on its 20th anniversary edition. And not only has the book survived several Marie Kondo-style blitzes on my house, and I am hard on everything, it's also survived 2 house moves. But I realised when I reread it ahead of this session that there are some techniques I still use every day, at least every week, which is a pretty good book in my world. So Paul, welcome. It is so good to have you here. Thank you for coming on.
Kathy, I'm delighted to join you, really am.
Oh, it's lovely to see you. So let's start with the real basics. So SUMO sounds a bit harsh, doesn't it? Shut up and move on, but that's kind of not, it's not all of it, is it? Tell us about what
the origin story of sumo goes back to a land far away called Glasgow. and I was doing, back about 2002, I was doing a coaching and counselling skills workshop. And, tell me how you feel about that. And thanks for sharing all that kind of language and the ability to ask probing questions. And then a delegate, I can't even tell you, male, female, whatever, they suddenly said, well, if all else fails, you can always tell people to sumo. And it's like, sumo? Yeah, shut up, move on. And people laughed. And then I was doing the same course a week later. So I fed that line in, that story. And if the metaphor I'd use, if that was a seed in 2002, let's just say I've fed it, I've watered it, I've nourished it, I've taken cuttings off it, and I've created a huge garden now based on that one idea. So it was a provocative term. I was early in my days of speaking and trying to develop a brand. And what was just a catchphrase then became a phrase I used a little bit more in my talks and workshops. And then I had a smorgasbord of little ideas and tools. And sumo became the umbrella term to describe those. And I became known as the sumo guy.
I love it. And it's those kind of techniques we're going to cover a few of those today, I really hope. And it's a bit of, it does stand for shut up and move on, but not, there is a bit of tough love in there, but it's not just tough love, it's also about self-reflection, isn't it? And the two have to work together.
Yeah, I mean it is provocative, and what I've had to sort of learn is I do more and more less training and workshops and more conferences. Now, I'm in a space that's very crowded with celebrities and people who've achieved things like gold medals and climbing Everest and etc. etc. And my main backstory, apart from coming across the phrase, is I managed 30 women on the economy beef burger line in Lowestoft many years ago.
Feels
Which, to be
like a
fair,
challenge.
I think is a bigger challenge than scaling Everest blindfolded, but that's just my opinion. But so it's provocative because it kind of got me kind of like, what do you mean sumo? You know, but the shut up bit was always for me, it was more take time out, stop, think, reflect. It was more of a shh, really, rather than shut up, move on kind of approach. And it did evolve because it got to embrace the ideas by a lot of organizations, but with that, we've become more sensitive around language in recent years. But even 15 years ago, some people just said to me, love your ideas, not happy with the phrase, shut up, move on. And one head teacher told me, because they were doing school work with not just the staff, but with the children using the ideas. And she just said, look, one of our values is to show respect. And I don't think you show respect to people by telling them to shut up. So I need you to change the title of your program. I'm like, Linda, it's my brand. I spent flipping years developing it. And a very interesting phrase. She said, if you don't, she said, I get that, but if you don't change, I don't think we can use it anymore. And that was the kind of the friction, the challenge I had as to can I use a different phrase to say the same thing, but in a maybe less contentious way. And so the alternative is stop, understand, move on. And they both kind of marry together very much.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And so we're going to talk about some of the brilliant techniques in the book, and there are loads, right? So we're not going to cover all of them by any stretch. So I have picked a couple of my favorites, the ones that have sort of stuck with me over the years. So one of my favorites is E plus R equals O. And that sounds really simple, but can you tell us what that means and how that works in real life?
Yeah, so the inspiration around that does go back to a guy called Jack Canfield. You may remember, some people may remember, he co-wrote a series years ago called Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Okay.
And I was listening to an audio cassette, that's how long ago it is, back in about 91, 92. And he just mentions it as part of his program. He didn't go into any big detail, but he went, it's the E plus R equals O, it's the event plus our response that influences the outcome. And now I said, well, yeah, obvious. Well, lots of things are obvious in hindsight, but I really thought at the time, Kathy, I'd got into the trap of thinking events happen and they lead to an outcome, and that I don't have much to do with the outcome. It's all about the event. And it was quite a profound impact on me to realize that, in a sense, I'm in the equation, that two people, two organizations, two businesses can have the same event, the same experience, the same challenge, the same opportunity, and they can end up with a different outcome to each other. Not because the event was different, but because of how they chose to respond to the event. And I tell a story about how I get this email off this relative lives in Australia. I'm angry, I'm emotional, I'm wanting to flip him. Well, reply immediately. I check out with my wife, who, she sees the good in everyone, and which is very frustrating for me at times. And she reads the email and she goes, he's totally out of order. And I'm like, right, if St. Helen of Warrington thinks he is out of order, then he's out of order. And I'm looking for the relevant letters on the keyboard. Where's the F? Where's the U? Where's the C? How do you spell fuchsia? And then because I am a slow typer, which I count as a superpower, it did actually, I had time also in the back of my mind to go, hang on a minute, if you send this email, Paul, what would the outcome be? And I'm like, well, there's a very good chance him and I will no longer be speaking. And when he does come home at Christmas to visit the family, to say it's going to be awkward will be an understatement. And then people are going to ask, how come you two are no longer speaking? And then I'd go, well, you should have seen the email he sent me, which is true. But the rest of the story is the reason why we've got that outcome that we're no longer speaking is because the email he sent me and my reply, my response, my reaction. And I share that often in my events and just get people to kind of like wake up in some respects. And I think the shut up bit is about wake up, get off autopilot. We make choices every single day, and we sometimes just make them out of habit on autopilot without considering them. And sometimes we don't take ownership for our response to situations. So yeah, E plus R equals O has been a game changer for me, and I came across it over 30 odd years ago.
Yeah, I love that. And it is very true as well that our initial the event, especially things like emails, we are so um at risk of that initial response, which is all kind of, our inner caveman expecting us to be chased by a tiger. So all those chemicals flood our body and we go, oh my God. And your body's
Totally.
like, you're gonna die, you're gonna die. It's like, it's an email from a client. And actually,
Yeah.
probably if you leave it for a couple of hours and read it again, it's not quite as pissy as it initially sounded. You just
Yeah.
read it in the wrong frame of mind. And
Yeah.
actually, even if it
Absolutely.
is that pissy, let's just shut up, pause
Yeah.
before we do anything, and then think about our response. Because yeah, you do have, even when things like COVID and um, lockdown, all of that, you can very much see people felt like they were being controlled and told what to do, but you still have an opportunity in how you respond to that, I think. So
Do you
yeah,
think, yeah, I mean, we live in a fast-paced world, don't we? And we're on, as I say, we're on autopilot. We're busy rushing, doing, and pause as a strategy for life is very underrated.
yeah,
But one thing that I say to people that actually helps them, although you may see it differently to me and other people might, but I actually say you're not responsible for your first reaction,
oh,
but you are responsible for your first action. So the fact that you felt wound up, when I read that email off that relative, I thought it was unjust, it was unfair, etc., etc. Okay, well, actually, that is, in Daniel Kahneman speak, thinking fast and slow are two brains, system one are fast brain. You've had an automatic fast reaction. Well, that's okay. You're not responsible for your first reaction, but you are responsible for your first action. And it's that gap between the initial how you feel and then hang on a minute. And there's a phrase, one of Stephen Covey's 7 habits is begin with the end in mind. And if I think about E plus R equals O, and then go, okay, begin with the end in mind. So if I've got a situation in my work, in my personal life, asking yourself the question, so what do you want your outcome to be here? All right, you've got an issue, you've got a challenge, you're upset, you're angry, you feel it's unjust, unfair, what's happened. Fair enough. Live with that. It's a reaction, it's part of being human. But what do you want your outcome to be now? Is it you're happy that you and your relative in Australia are no longer speaking? Then if you're okay with that outcome and you've thought about that will probably be the outcome, begin with the end in mind, then send the email you want to send. But if that's not the outcome you want, then you're going to need to think about how you best respond. So, and lots of we are impulsive creatures at times. And, I will make mistakes and I will still overreact. But I'm trying to, with the book and all my material, just give people some more insights to understand their own behavior, their own reactions and responses, and those of other people.
brilliant. And which leads us really nicely on to neural pathways, are sort of inbuilt, our brain's very own cheat sheet for getting stuff done efficiently that sometimes it's not as helpful as you would like. Um, and it's great that our mind, shortcuts things. When things happen
Mm.
all the time, you get an email from somebody, you automatically assume it's worse, right? Because then you respond. I don't know what the
Yeah,
brain's trying to do, but we have these neural pathways, and part of the shut up thing is almost going, well, actually, let's not take the automatic route. Is there a different one?
absolutely. I mean, if you the analogy I use in the book is if you're going for a summer's walk or whatever, and you come to a field of long, tall grass, and you can't find a path, you kind of get your way through it. You kind of create your own little path. And then if you come to the same field the next day, most people will then take the path that they see. and they keep on repeating, repeating, repeating. Now, there may have been a shorter, better way to get across the field, but once you've kind of found something, and the brain, we are a hostage to our human biology at times because our brain is constantly looking for ways to save energy. So we will have these shortcuts. We will jump to conclusions. We will, Daniel Kahneman, again, just to quote him, one of his quotes that's not a well-known one is deep thinking is to humans what swimming is to cats. They can both do it, but they prefer not to. And sometimes I think we're saving energy, we're on autopilot, we're conditioned in a certain way, we've got those established neural pathways, and we just think that's it, that's life, that's how I am. And it is that chance to let's just press pause, ponder your options, and then maybe plan a different route.
I love it. I'm literally writing that quote down because I love it so much. It's just brilliant.
I'll take credit for one of the words. He didn't
Okay.
actually use the word deep. He just went thinking is to
Uh,
humans. But I think it's more deep thinking, isn't it? It's
it
that
is. Yeah.
taking time out to press pause, to really reflect on things. And because those neural pathways are well established, people go, oh, if they're trying to lose weight, or I've tried everything, well, very often, and even if you lose a lot of weight, you then revert back very often to how you've done things before. So, creating new habits and new neural pathways isn't something that happens overnight.
Yeah, indeed. And the other thing well, there are two more things that have definitely stuck with me over the years. Hippo Time.
Mm,
I find this really links to productivity because we are, or certainly I am, one of those people that just get stuff done, and it's very easy to just, when a disappointment hits or something bad happens, you just go, right, just get on with it, get on with it.
mm.
And actually, Hippo Time. So I'm going to let you describe what it is, but it's kind of nicely. If you picture a hippo wallowing in mud, it's pretty good analogy, right? And there was definitely a day last week when I had a disappointment, and I kind of thought, well, I'm not just going to launch straight into my day and possibly not have a very productive day because I'm going to be slightly sulking. I'm going to go sulk in the bath for half an hour, and I will let myself sulk in the bath for half an hour, and then I'm going to snap out of it and crack on. So yeah, love a bit of Hippo Time. But how do you know? So Hippo Time is basically, it's sort of, how would you just, I sort of think of it as almost like sort of stroking your wounds a little bit, isn't it? And
Yeah, it came about. I developed a number of my ideas, but then someone said to me, a mentor of mine, Paul Sandham, said, I'm loving the way this book is taking shape and your content, but what happens when the event is a real challenging one? You can't just literally shut up and move on. And so again, I was wrestling with that, and then I was talking to a sports fan who was into rugby league, and he was talking about how his team had lost in a major competition, Leeds Rhinos, and he said, and he'd taken his son, and when he came home, he was talking about how his wife had said, "Oh well, never mind. There's always next year." And Steve said to me, he said, "Paul, and when you just want a right good wallow, and you're not ready to just cheer up and be happy and think, well, there'll always be next year." And as soon as he said it, the light bulb went on, and I went, yeah, we do need a little bit of a wallow. We need some hippo time. And for me, there's two aspects to hippo time. There's one, sometimes it is okay to not always feel okay. To feel mad, bad, or sad is all right. And I think we sometimes, you talked about your attitude sometimes of, well, it's happened, let's move on. There are times it's healthy and helpful to digest your disappointment a bit. Maybe even depending on what's brought you into the hippo time, often more on a personal issue, process your pain or sit with your sadness. There are things in life where I think it's healthy to actually do that. The other aspect of hippo time, though, is they don't just go into the mud or water to wallow. They go there to get out the heat and cool down and play. And so sometimes for me, it's not that I've had a setback or a challenge, but I've had a crazy schedule. And for me, I realize it's a bit like an elastic band that's been stretched for quite some time. Yeah, but if you stretch it too far for too long, it's going to snap. So you need to build in a bit of slack. And so for me, sometimes I'm like last night, having got back from an event in Middlesbrough and been in Burnley the day before, I'm abroad at the weekend. It's like I just want to be on the couch with my wife, and my daughter is with us at the moment, have dinner on our knees and watch some good TV. And that was almost a little bit of a so there's that need it because there's been a setback, and sometimes you need it because you've been stretched for too far.
Yeah, exactly. And with all things, it's and we're going to talk a bit about t-shirt wearing later on.
Mm.
How do we know when our hippo time is healthy versus when we're just being a bit self-indulgent and, regurgitating the same misery in our brains for a bit too long?
It is one of out of all my sumo principles, it is the one that you do feel you need to also say, please read the small print. Because hippo time is okay, but it is temporary. And I say it's a detour, but it's not a destination. And I think one of the things for people to realize is they have, to some degree, I would argue, they have some control over how long they wallow for. And I think some people just don't think they've got that. And so they go, well, yeah, but I had this big setback and you can't expect me to, blah, blah, blah. And they'll do things that actually aren't always helpful. They'll become maybe quite isolated. They just keep listening to sad music. They'll keep reliving the event, the setback, etc., etc. And just being told, look, not in a harsh way, but you're going to need some hippo time. But the length of time you need there is to a large extent due to you and your choices you make. And one of the things that one of my other principles is a set of questions I came up with several years ago, and it's in that sumo principle, develop fruity thinking, and it's about reflecting on certain questions. One of them is, all right, on a scale of 1 to 10, where ten's death or the end of the world, where is this? And you suddenly realise I've been wallowing about something and it's a 2, and I've been wallowing about it for the last month. How important will this be in 6 months' time? How will I feel about this in 6 months' time? Many years ago, I wrote a book called How Not to Worry, and the Daily Mail were going to serialize it over 5 days, which was just going to be unbelievable in the sort of like health and well-being section of the newspaper. 5 days coverage in a national newspaper. And the problem the publisher had was they said, well, the book's coming out, but we're going to have to do a print run, even before another print run, even before it's launched, because it will become a bestseller. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I'm ecstatic. And then my wife comes into my office one morning and then just goes, you're going to need some hippo time. And I went, why? She said, the Daily Mail have changed their mind. They're not going to serialize the book. Now, what was interesting was that was in the March. The book was going to be coming out in the April. And I was gutted and one thing and another. But just before I left my office, I was speaking at an event in the afternoon. I put on my diary in on September the 13th. This event happened on March the 13th. And I just wrote in my diary, 6 months ago today, the Daily Mail decided not to serialize my book. How important is it now? And it's that sense of getting some perspective. One of the other questions, I won't go through all 7, is okay, is my response appropriate and effective? Is sitting on the couch, eating Doritos, drinking beer and wine, doom scrolling, watching Netflix, all right, you might want to do that for a night, maybe even 2. But if you've been doing it for the last 3, 4 weeks, is your response appropriate and effective? And when people go, yeah, but I just haven't got the energy and I just don't feel like it, that's maybe when you suddenly need to say to yourself quietly, I need to sumo on this. I need to get off the couch. I need to drink some water, prioritize my sleep, and to get out into nature. So, how long do you spend there? To some degree, it's down to you.
Yeah, absolutely. The 6 month thing is one of those that has stuck with me since my first book reading. Whenever something, horrible happens, usually work-wise, I tend not to think of it personal-wise, but one of the questions I will ask myself is, how is this going to feel 6 months from now? Am I
Yeah,
still going to be upset about it? Or actually, is it, like you say, your scale of death to
yeah.
not that death is, um, I was on holiday recently and I've just broken up with a boyfriend. And my friend and I spotted this meme on Instagram, which was a psychiatrist who said, I'm disappointed that we've spent the last 3 weeks processing this. And there was a picture of a man. It's just a bit like, yeah, it's got to be an appropriate response, right, for the situation at hand. So
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to move on and get on with it. Yeah, love a bit of fruity thinking. And that sort of links as well very close to the t-shirt, which I touched on earlier. We all know people who have very, very favorite wardrobes in terms of t-shirts. Explain how you're changing your t-shirt works.
Yeah, one of the things that I realized about myself, Kathy, because it all starts with me and my challenges and my life. So I'd had, without going into detail, an incredibly chaotic and challenging childhood. And I suppose as I went on in my late teenage years and into my 20s, when I wasn't handling life well, I would always go back to, well, it was all to do with my childhood, and I've got no responsibility in this. And it just evolved over time. But I thought a metaphor I came up with ultimately was imagine if what people thought about themselves or life, if they had a life motto or a life mantra and they wore it on a t-shirt, what motto or mantra would you have? And for some people, it's carpe diem, seize the day, or don't worry, be happy. I did meet one person. I didn't have to imagine what he thought about life. He actually had the message on his t-shirt. It simply said this, 4 words. One of them's a swear word, Kathy. Are we okay with it?
We are very, very okay with
Okay.
that, yeah.
And it just said on the t-shirt, same shit, different day. And I thought you must be great to work with, doctor. But what I was alluding to in the book was actually for some people, there's just one word on their t-shirt and it's the word victim. And there are genuine victims in life, which I want to stress. But there are some people who just develop the victim mindset. And it's almost like their response to events that don't go well is to wear the victim t-shirt. Life's not fair, which it isn't. And then I don't get a great outcome because by being a victim, I don't take any ownership or responsibility or think, well, how can I influence or improve this? Or how can I turn it round? You just go, it's unfair. Who's to blame? And you don't take any personal responsibility. Now, the sad thing is, not only have I met people who've worn the t-shirt, but I think I've worn it myself. And or if I've not, I've sometimes gone window shopping for it. And it comes back to when you're in your hippo time, having the wallow, but just be careful you've not got a flipping giant victim t-shirt on while you're in the mud. And so again, it's provocative. And I think some people like being the victim. I think it can give them attention. And I think it can give them also I'm going to use the word excuse for, well, I didn't do anything with my life because I had a really bad childhood. Or I started my business when we were in the middle of a recession. Or things were going really well, but then Brexit happened. And I'm not saying that those things haven't affected you. What I'm just saying, which goes back to E plus R equals O, is no, I get that. And life isn't fair. And there's no, I study Stoicism, I study the major world religions. There's not an ancient text out there that has ever said the phrase, life is fair. But we kind of want it to be. So when it doesn't go our way, some people will go, we'll need to deal with this, adapt to it. If you give them a lemon, make lemonade. But other people, pass me my victim t-shirt, and they're actually disempowering themselves. So that of all my sumo principles, if Hippo Time needs to have this small print, it's okay, but it's temporary. The change your t-shirt one is, all right, this one could make you feel a bit uncomfortable because it's a very challenging one. But it's one that I've worn and I know it wasn't serving me well.
Yeah, and I think we all do to an extent, don't we? Or events conspired against me. I didn't have any power in that situation. It's not my fault. It is an excuse at the end of the day. Reasons for sure, but you can't let them dictate the next however many years, months.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So sometimes when you want to wear the t-shirt, have your hippo time, leave the t-shirt to one side, and then think about, okay, how can we move on?
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm going to go skipping out of order a little bit because it just feels like it flows better. Bit of Latin, carpe diem.
Mm,
What we're doing when we're getting out of your hippo time, right? That's our
abs- absolutely. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, reflection's important, but I think some people just love to reflect. It's like lots of people consume lots of personal development or self-help books or business books, and they think as a result of that they're taking action, which they are to some extent. But you've got to be careful. It's something to talk about in this chapter. Action illusion, where you confuse activity with effectiveness. So you've been really busy, you've bought all the books, you've done all your research, but great. Now, what about taking some action? Because life doesn't reward people with good ideas or good intentions. It rewards people who take action. And carpe diem, seize the day. Again, with all my principles, I've just tried to sort of, rather than give them standard phrases, I've got develop through your thinking, change your t-shirt, hippo time's okay, and learn Latin. It's like, what do you mean learn Latin? What's the Latin phrase we need to learn? We need to learn carpe diem, seize the day. And I think a lot of people are busy doing nothing, and they're not actually, and they go, I've had a really busy day. Well, I'm not actually that bothered how busy you've been. How effective have you been? Because you could have done less hours, but going back to the productivity nerd, but you could have been far more effective because you'd planned, because you'd prioritized, and because you took some action. Whereas other people deceive themselves into thinking they're being busy and therefore they're being effective when they actually haven't.
Yeah, really true. And we talk about this a lot. Being productive is not about doing more stuff. Being productive is almost certainly about doing less stuff, but doing the right things.
Absolutely.
And knowing what those right things are is really key. And I always remember when I set up my business, oh God, how long ago? 11 years, something like that. There was another woman who was setting up a similar business at the same time. And it took her 6 months. And I'm sort of thinking, why does it take 6 months to set up a service business? You need a website. I did that one night. It was a bit shit. But you know what? When I've got myself organized and I'm up and running and I've got some money, I will redo it, right? For now, I've got a website. I've got an email address. I've updated my LinkedIn profile. I'm sort of here. Got my insurance. How does that take 6 months? I could have bashed that out in 6 hours, right? But the
Yeah,
main thing is I'm
exactly.
looking for a client and I want to do the work.
Yeah,
So there's definitely, I probably could slow down and seize a little less, to be fair, and do a bit more research. But there are people who will fill time getting things just right and tweaking and tinkering and making sure everything's perfect. And actually, it's like, just get on with it. Just do
yeah.
it.
But the thing is, the more you tinker, it's like when I do a book, I can do a lot of research, and that again feels good and it's important to do. But there comes a point you go, okay, are you just using now? I'm just doing more research as an excuse for not actually flipping getting down to writing the book. The other thing I'd contrast with Seize the Day, particularly I'm, in the insights profiling, the colors.
Yeah,
I'm very much a red,
yeah, same.
get it done. And my equivalent, which I talk about in the Sumo book, is a commander. And the thing, a commander by nature wants to get things done. So Carpe Diem sees the day is like, yeah, that's what I do. Whereas some people want to get it right. But sometimes we can be so busy and so feeling absolutely thrilled that I've just crossed something else off my to-do list. Rather than just seize the day, I think we need to also savor it,
Yeah,
and have that time out where you've got that hot cup of coffee and you smell the coffee, and when you're having your whatever you're eating, a snack or lunch, and you actually briefly, and that sounds a bit weird, close your eyes and savor the flavor.
yeah,
And I think for some, and again, I think I got into the trap of being so get it done, get it done, get it done, that it's like when I got a book done, it was like, well, great, that isn't it great? Do you feel proud? Well, it needs to hit 10,000 sales. Right, it's now hit 10,000. Well, it'd be great if it hit 50,000. And it's like, can you just savor your success sometimes rather than always just think what's next? Sometimes enjoy what's now.
yeah. I literally have on my we use a task system called ClickUp, and on our template for winning a new big client, I literally have a task on there that says celebrate the win before the new client horrors kick in. Because otherwise, I'm straight from yes, contract signed to right. Who's doing this? Who's doing that? How do we do this? And I'm straight into the doing. And it's actually, do you know what? Find yourself, a nice bottle of something, or put a message out to people going, oh, I just won a new client, it's amazing, and just savor it for a minute before you
Absolutely.
immediately launch into, and now we've got to kick it off. because then you're straight back into the doing, and you haven't appreciated all the effort and the work that's gone into and the excitement of having a lovely new client on the books.
Absolutely. Yeah, great stuff.
Yes, I mean, I don't always do it, but it's on the task list. I did it the last time. I was so proud of myself. I literally got people around with a bottle of fizz and went, I've won a new client. They've signed the contract today. Do you want to come round? Got champagne on
Right.
that.
Well, if I'm in the area and you win a new client, text me.
Will do. Will do. It was a good client as well. Sometimes it just has to be a canister, but this one was worth a bottle of champagne. So we a bit more. Is this Latin? That's not Latin. Que sera sera isn't Latin, is it? It's a song.
No, it's so yeah, back in the 1950s, it was an Alfred Hitchcock song, and Doris Day sang Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see, Que sera, sera. And again, as a mindset, because ultimately, if you step back from sumo and the phrase, what is all my material really about? How do I get the best out of myself? How do I get the best out of others? How do I get the best out of life? That's it. That's it in a nutshell. Three massively important questions. Because if you're working and getting the best out of yourself, the best out of your relationships with others, and the best out of life, that isn't just going to impact you, that's going to impact those around you. But I think for some people, and again, this will be controversial to some of your audience, but I think fate is overrated. And I think some people just go, well, it was just fate and it was meant to be. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. But I think we're still in this. I think we're still in this equation. I think we can shape our future by the choices we take. I don't think the future is just a place you get to. I think it's a place you get to shape. And so the final principle is, look, just ditch Doris Day. Ditch this, oh, well, whatever will be, which I get if things are not in your control. I went to celebrate my 40th birthday with my family in Ibiza last weekend. And Ibiza, sort of like early-ish October, it's going to be all right. Nice temperatures, not too hot. In the last fortnight, Ibiza's had some of its worst ever weather in its flipping history. Now, when I get to the airport, I had to have that attitude to some extent. Look, will the flight go? Will it go on time? Will it be delayed? Will it be cancelled? Do you know what, Paul? There's not a lot you can do in that case. So in that situation, yeah, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. But if I then got on the plane, and it was delayed 3 hours, but we got on it, and the pilot announced, right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure where we're going today. But, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. We'll fly at 35,000 feet and we'll just see where the air currents take us. Like, no, 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 no. We're not going to be doing that. So I just think some people's attitude is they just go too much with the flow. And I'm a believer in flexibility and being spontaneous. But I am also a believer in having a plan, having a vision. I might not be one that's always got clear goals about everything, but I've got a clear compass of the general direction that I want to go into. So if someone said to me, do you want to invest in my property management company and maybe buy a couple of properties yourself and make some extra money? I'm going, no, I don't really fancy that. If they said, I'm thinking of doing some YouTube videos that make some important points, but where I kind of need someone to be to role play with me, and maybe we use humour, I'm like, that sounds like me. I know the direction. I'm not going to just leave it all to fate. The future, we can be inspired by having a view of what the future looks like. So whatever will be, the future's not ours to see. I just think is generally a pretty lousy philosophy and approach to life.
Ditching Doris, love it, love it, love it. And there's one of the last things we're going to cover. So we very much talked about self-management and basically being the best version of ourselves and challenging ourselves to a certain extent, looking after ourselves but challenging ourselves, being self-aware when we're making decisions. The other thing that I really liked about the book is the beach ball, because this is
Yeah.
about other people and how we interact with other people in our world, whether at home or at in work. So tell us a bit about the beach ball principle, Paul, if you could.
So use imagination for a moment. Imagine there's this large beach ball and I'm holding it. You and I, let's say, are in a meeting room and maybe let's say the beach ball's really large. So I'm in the room, but you can't see me because this flipping beach ball's so huge. Now, from your perspective, if you're asked the question, what colour's the beach ball? You look at what you can see and you might see three colours, red, yellow, and orange. Now, I'm on the other side of the beach ball, so I'm looking at the same beach ball as you, but I'm seeing blue, white, and green. Now, the thing is, we're looking at the same thing. In other words, in work and in personal life, we're looking at the same situation, but we've got our own different perspectives on it for a whole shed load of reasons: our personality, how much time we've got in our hands, our financial situation, our particular work priorities or life priorities at the time. There's just 101 things that influence how you see the beach ball. Now, what I say to people, because I actually carry this beach ball with me when I go on stage and I show it, I go, look, your view of the beach ball isn't incorrect. So if we were having a conversation, Kathy, and you said, well, it's red, yellow, and orange, I'm not going to say, well, no, you're wrong. It's not incorrect. But then I start to swivel the rest of the beach ball round and I go, your perspective might not be incorrect, but it could be incomplete. And then it's like, oh, I'd not thought about that. Oh, that's an interesting perspective. I would never realize that. And the other thing also about in relationships is we can get into conflict. So again, if it's you and I in the meeting and I go into it going, and I say to a colleague, you're not going to believe this. Kathy thinks this is red, yellow, and orange. What is she on at the moment? So the purpose of my meeting is to convince you that you're wrong and I'm right. But therefore, I don't listen to understand your perspective. I don't explore it. I'm just there to say you're wrong. And if you challenge me, I don't listen to understand you. I listen to defend. But again, if you turn the beach ball around in a different direction, you suddenly go, oh, we could both be right on this. Yes, it is red, yellow, and orange, but it also could be blue, white, and green. And we live in a very binary world and very polarized world, particularly in our politics, where actually I think it's far more healthy in our relationships at times to just kind of go, you know what? Let me try and understand your perspective. And not therefore then say, I disagree, I think you're wrong, but sometimes to say to people, that's interesting. Can I share another perspective? And if I just to share one brief thing from my marriage, I've been married 38 years to the same woman,
Well,
but years
I
ago,
hoped.
yeah, but years ago, my wife would say this to me. Um, we'd have conflicts, we'd have issues, misunderstandings, and she'd say, I shouldn't have to tell you, you should know. And in the end, I'm like, I kind of failed my mind reading exams and I'm going around my own little world. It's just going to really help me, not for me to have to second guess, but for you sometimes to communicate your needs. And there is one question we occasionally ask each other, which is, there's a situation, there's something going on, and it might be, okay, look, if there was one thing I could do to help you now, what would it be? And that's why I moved out. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. Um, but sometimes I don't know
Really
what
odd.
you need. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So rather than me guess, make assumptions, or you project onto me an expectation that I should know what's going on in your mind and I should know exactly what you need. Yeah, it's nice to be thoughtful and be courteous but sometimes just flipping tell me because I don't always see your side of the beach ball. And what is obvious to you might not always be obvious to me. So, in terms of both in work, in business, there are organizations who hire me, bring me in to speak, they buy beach balls. I have this little sumo squeezy stress toy that is a beach ball. And one of the actual statements on the white part of the beach ball is what is the other person's perspective? So it's a visual prompt that when you're communicating with a customer, a colleague, one of your kids, a family member, two things. One, let's try and be clear on their side of the beach ball. And secondly, have you clearly communicated your perspective? Because what is obvious to you might not be obvious to other people. So for me, beach ball in terms of relationships is an absolute game changer.
Yeah, no, I love that. Really love it. And just the fact I was laughing when your wife said you should just know. I have absolutely said that to somebody before when it's to me been blindingly obvious what the problem is. And they go, I don't know what's the problem. And I'm like, well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you because you're clearly and yes, and yes, arguments arise from that kind of from
Yeah.
those kind of
No,
phrases,
I'm not.
right?
I'm not being hired by some, society that says always take the man's side on this. But I just think it is what it is, and we just sometimes need to appreciate that what goes on in your world might be different to what's going on in mine,
Yeah,
and not always to make have these high expectations. I'm
yeah.
sure there'll be people who now will track me down and rip me apart for that phrase and that comment, but. I've just found my marriage actually is a bit easier since we stopped doing the mind reading games.
Yes. Well, and there's some things that you probably should know. You should remember birthdays and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
There are
don't
some things
worry,
that
don't worry.
one should know, but
Thir-
other things,
38 years this Friday. No, I'm on it. I'm on it.
just checking. Just checking. Oh, Paul, that's been such a good conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. Sumo is one of those really rare books, I think. It's really practical. It's very human. It's also quite funny, which I love. Um, because it makes it very readable. I mean, I reread it before this, having obviously read it years ago. And judging by the state of my copy, which is not the 20th anniversary edition, it's had quite a hard reading in its life. But it's not a hard read to get through. It's pacey and it's
Mm.
well put together, and it's got some nice little pictures in it that make the point. So yeah, definitely worth a read. If you haven't read it, go find it, dig it out on. You can get it from Paul's website, which is www.thesumoguy.com and all good bookshops. Go check it out. Paul, thank you so much again. It's been a complete joy. And yeah, let's all just shut up and move on and get more productive.
Absolutely. Great chatting to you, Kathy. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. So that was my conversation with the absolutely lovely Paul McGee. Do go check him out. His website is thesumoguy.com. I really hope you enjoyed our chat. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Kathy Soulsby, and that was Productivity Nerd, a podcast about helping you do more of the right things efficiently so that you can live your very best life. If you did enjoy it, please rate, review, subscribe, all that malarkey. It really helps more people find the podcast.